It's me, Geordie Pete, Reading again. Early start to the weekend. It's Thursday evening. Good evening to you wherever you are in the world. Welcome to our Facebook crowd. Welcome to our TFA crowd. Welcome to Twitter. Welcome to everyone. Our Legends guest this evening is best known for wearing the lily white of Spurs and, of course, the famous green of Northern Ireland, who he made 63 memorable appearances for. It's Hollywood Balls and it's Legends Night. Okay, as I said, it's me, Geordie Pete Reading, and special thanks go out tonight. Our show is sponsored by Mooney and Lambert, and of course partnered by the football app TFA. Stay tuned toward the end of the show, by the way, because we've got a special book to give away, courtesy of Mooney and Lambert. We're going to be giving away the collector's version of My Eyes Have Seen the Glory, in which our next guest appears. Welcome, Gerry. How are you?
I'm good, Pete. How are you?
Very well, thanks. I think I'm a little bit warmer than you, looking by the get-up.
Yes, and in Ireland, this is getting towards the winter. I think it was 6 degrees this morning when I got up at 7:30. I'm sure you're probably about 60 degrees.
It's not far off. The signs of summer are not summer ending are not with us just yet. It's still very humid. Listen, first and foremost, an amazing addition to our Legends series. It's what we're all about: getting great names from the games and trying to give the fans basically the essence of those cult heroes on the terraces at that time. So we're going to have a wander down memory lane, Gerry. Now, going right back, you supported Leeds as a young boy. Who were your childhood heroes then?
Well, I was supporting Leeds through the 60s, and Leeds were a great side. And of course, it was Billy Bremner and Johnny Giles in the middle of the park. They were the two midfield generals. And then in latter years, there was other players come into it. Jack Charlton was at the back, Paul Madeley, Paul Reaney was the full back, Terry Cooper was the left back, you know, and Gary Sprake was the goalkeeper. But my favourite was Mick Jones. He played up front. He was a target man, centre forward, brave and strong, and put his head in there. And him and Alan Clark were the two main men. But on the right-hand side, they had Peter Lorimer, who was a fabulous crosser of the ball and great shot. He had the hardest shot in football. And then on the left wing, you had Eddie Gray. And Eddie Gray was, or sorry, not Eddie Gray. Eddie Gray was on the left wing. He was brilliant. His brother Frank was a fullback, but he was the left winger and played for Scotland. Great skill and technique. So they were all around. It was a great team.
I mean, you've just named players there. You know, when you talk about legends, you can talk about maybe a few in a team. I think you've just probably named the full team there. It was absolutely phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's other players that come into the side later on, and Albert Johansen was one of the first black players to actually come to the UK, and he was a fabulous player. He played for Leeds then, and he was one that always stood out for me. But they had like Terry Yorth, who I played with at Tottenham. Terry was the Leeds player, and he went in and he was one of the replacements when the likes of Johnny Giles and Billy Bremner were getting on in age. I haven't even mentioned Alan Hunter, Alan Biter, Hunter. He was another one who was a bit tasty as a left-footed centre half, and he wasn't afraid to kick you either.
I was recalling a famous Leeds story, funnily enough, just a couple of weeks ago. A certain centre half had approached the opposition's bus before the game and had handed out a menu for the local infirmary hospital just before the game. So talk about pre-match banter that day.
Had to be Jack Charlton, had to be Big Jack.
Yes, yeah, it was. But your journey began as a 13-year-old at St. Paul Swifts. Were you a forward even then, that early in your career?
It wasn't even 13. It was more like 15 or 16. I just played Gaelic football and hurling. That was my two sports. I never really played that much soccer. I played soccer in the street with my mates, and we all pretended we were George Best or I was Mick Jones or whoever. We're all different players. But most of the kids in my area were Manchester United fans. They were big Manchester United fans. And then in latter years, Liverpool was another big club in Northern Ireland. So I was just one of the ones that stood out being a Leeds supporter. But I played in the street, but I never played for any proper team until I was maybe 15 or 16.
You mentioned Gaelic football. Apparently, I mean, you really, really excelled at that. There's a story to why that didn't continue.
It's in the book. It's in the book, but basically, I was in Gaelic football, so anything went. It was rough, and if somebody hit you, you just hit them back. And I mean, you punch each other, and then the referee wouldn't send you off. He just let you get on with it. And it sometimes it would spark fights all over the pitch. But it was sort of rough and ready, and it helps you to sort of adapt and grow up. And then when I started playing soccer at a decent level and people tackled me, I used to think, are you joking? You think that's a tackle? That's not a tackle. But then,
did you have to sort of calm it down a little bit when you were into the football then?
Well, you see, my first game for Bangor, basically my first game for Bangor when I was a 17-year-old, and they were an Irish League club. And I trained with them on the Tuesday and I trained on the Thursday. And then on the other days, I trained for Gaelic football and hurling. And I would play soccer on a Saturday, and I'd play 2 Gaelic matches on a Sunday. I'd play one at 2 o'clock and another one at 4 o'clock.
What do you do in your spare time?
That's it, exactly. Friday was the only night I had off, Pete. I think Friday was the day off. I used to chill, but I loved being out and about and running about and getting into trouble and having a bit of crack, So, but the first game I played for Bangor was after two training sessions, and they were in the semi-final of the Steel and Sons Cup. And the manager was a guy called Ralph McGugan, and he said to me, he says, right, big man, he says, we're in the semi-final. He said, these lads have worked hard to get to the semi-final, and they're playing civil service at the civil service ground. He said, so we're going to put you on the bench. And I said, right, fair enough. And in those days, there was only one sub. And the game went accordingly till 75 minutes, and it was 1-1. And Ralph says, right, big man, I need a goal. He says, on you go. So I get on, and the first time I got the ball, I went past 1 and 2, and the big centre half was a big lump. He tried to kick me, and I went past him and had the shot, and the keeper made the save. And then Gary Reid was in there. He followed up for the rebound and stuck it in the back of the net. We went 2-1 up. So turned celebrating, and the big centre half says, hey, you do that again. He says, I'll break your legs. I said, will you? So the lad said, come on, leave it. And 2 or 3 minutes later, did the same again, only this time I smacked it straight in the back of the net. And then it turned around, and the big fella was coming towards me, and I hit him first, right hook. And I got sent off on my first game. I was on for about 7 minutes, but did enough damage. Like, we won the match 3-1. I couldn't play in the final, obviously, because I was suspended. But I remember coming into the dressing room the next Tuesday, and they were all calling me Cassius Clay and Muhammad Ali. And I thought, what's the big deal? Like, I've only hit him a dig in the face. Like, so they said the manager wants to see you in your office, in his office. So I went in to see Bertie Neal, who was my manager, and he said, big man, he says, what are you doing? He says, you punched the fella in the face. He said he was going to break my legs. And Bertie says, well, he said, he didn't really mean it, well, he shouldn't have said it.
He shouldn't have said it. Brilliant. It is that, though, like, as you say, that you can see yourself after coming out of the environment of Gaelic football. What was that? Speaking of Bangor, that was where you were spotted by Spurs themselves. But interestingly, in my research, that could have well been Arsenal, couldn't it, Gerry?
Arsenal made more running. They had Gordon Clark was their chief scout, and he chased me for 3-4 months, and he would watch me. But then what people don't know was myself and Johnny Jameson, who eventually went over to play for Hull. Johnny and I both were offered a trial with Tottenham, and we went on the QT. So we disappeared on a Monday morning and came back on the Thursday, Friday. And we trained with Tottenham. And I remember Peter Shreves picking me up at the airport and take me. He was the youth team manager, and he took me and he put us into digs for 3 or 4 days, which was great. And then we trained with the reserves, and then we played 1 or 2 times. We played with the first team, and then we had a game against the RAF, and I played against the RAF. And we beat them. I think we beat them 3-1. I scored at least 2 goals, and I thought it did pretty well. But at the end of the session, we were let go, and we were taken back to the airport. And the manager said to me when I got back to Bangor, "How did it go?" And I says, "Well, we did well. I thought we did well, but they didn't say anything to me." But little did I know they were negotiating prices, so it was all being done behind doors. And Arsenal were still pushing to sign me, and I was still playing Gaelic football, county level for Antrim, and I had a game on the Sunday morning. I played for Bangor on the Saturday afternoon, and the Sunday morning I was getting ready for the game in the afternoon at Casement Park, and I got a phone call from Jimmy Apperson, who was our vice chairman, and Jimmy says, "Big man, I need you to meet me at the back of the City Hall. You're signing today." And he didn't say who I was signing for, and I thought, am I signing for Arsenal or am I signing for Spurs? So I got to the hotel, which was the Dunandry Inn. And when I got to the hotel, I remember walking in, and Terry Neal was there to meet me. And he said, "You're not signing for Arsenal." He said, "You're signing for us. You're signing for Spurs." And he was the manager. But little did I know, like a year and a half later, Terry was going to become manager of Arsenal.
Yeah.
Crazy. And this is how things change so much, Pete, you know.
The cycles of football. I mean, you know, you talk about the players nowadays. They literally dictate where they're going to go. They know who are in for them. So it's quite, it's quite refreshing to hear that, turn up here, you're signing. Who for? Quite amazing, really, isn't it?
It was in those days, and it was quite a big fee. You know, £30,000
Yep.
then was a record fee from a Northern Irish point of view, and it was big money for the club, which helped the club to develop, and it gave me my opportunity. And I'd only been playing soccer for 3 years. So, it was good that actually he was signing for a top first division club, would be a Premier League club now. I'd only been playing the game for 3 years, so I knew I had a lot of improvement to do. But that was all part of it. I loved training, and I loved being coached. I just wish that I had a bit more coaching when I was younger.
And when you sign and you go through all the formalities and what you have to do, was it straight into training, or was there a period of bedding in with reserves, or how did that work?
Straight into training, and it was training a lot with the reserves and the first team, because the reserves and first team used to mix a lot together. Keith Birkinshaw was the coach, and of course you had Terry Neal was the manager, and Wolf Dixon was the main chief scout, and it was great. I have to say it was great. I just loved being at a club like Spurs, and with the facilities and the history. And then of course you've got the players I was playing with. Steve Perryman, just in awe of him. And then Pat Jennings, who was a Northern Ireland, went on to be a Northern Ireland teammate of mine. I was just sitting, that's Pat Jennings. And they had so many good players. But in the reserves at the time was Glenn Hoddle and
right.
Stevie Walford and Neil McNabb, and it was like the talent was unbelievable. I was thinking, like, Peter Shreves asked Glenn Hoddle one day. We were doing dribbling, and I used to go down, trained in the morning, and then had a bit of lunch, and then we would go back to the gymnasium in the afternoon and do skills and technique, and that's what I wanted to work on. I needed to work on that more than anything. And basically, we did some ball with one person, but ball was in my feet, and you're dribbling and doing little different turns and what have you. And then he says, "Okay, we had these circles drawn on the wall," and he said, "I want you to chip the ball into the circle, and then before it hits the ground, control it on your chest, and then if you're right-footed, you can kick it into the goal at that end, and if you're left-footed, you can kick it into the goal at that end." And I said, "That's a hard skill, And he said, Glenn, can you give me a demonstration?" And Glenn Hall stepped up, and Glenn was just like tall, lean, and everything he did was graceful. He was just great technique, and I'd only known him a couple of days, and Glenn said to Pete, he said, "Right foot or left foot?" Pete, I was having a laugh now, and right foot or left foot. So, of course, Peter Shreve said to him, "It's up to you." He said, "Well, right foot or left, whatever you want." And he went, "I'll chip it with my right foot and I'll shoot with my left foot." I thought, he's definitely having a laugh now. So he did, he chipped it in. And when he did things, Glenn just had so much gracefulness about him. And he took it on his chest and he controlled it and he set it up and then he hit it on the volley and it went straight in the top corner of the goal at the end. And it was like, and then Pete said, "There you go, there's the skill, follow that." I went, "How do you follow that? You couldn't follow that." So I was in a bit of awe for the first week or two. I thought,
sure,
listen, there's a lot to be done here. So I knew I had a lot of work to do. And it took me several months to find my way. But when I did, I settled down really well.
It's funny you say that. It was a show just a couple of weeks back, and I think it was Dave Besant that we had on. We were talking about players moving and fans' expectations. Gerry, you sign for a club, they don't take into consideration the fan that there's a bedding in period. You're away from home. It's a new club, new teammates. They just expect if Gerry's picked on Saturday, that's it, isn't it? It's that.
I mean, I was billed as a new Bobby Smith. and I didn't know too much about Bobby Smith, to be honest. But I mean, this guy scored goals for fun. He was an England centre forward, and he was a Spurs legend, But he was a powerhouse. He was very direct and very powerful. So that's the comparison. I would say I was quite direct and very forceful, and I had a lot of pace and power. So I mean, I just knew I had to keep improving, and I didn't get into the first team for maybe 5-6 months, and I was substitute for Tottenham on the bench against Everton. And we went up there and beat Everton at Goodison Park 2-0. And that was the start of it, And then you get thirsty, you want more. And it's just, and then the World Tour came, which I thought was badly organised because we were away for a long time. We did 4.5, 5 weeks away. And that was the season. When we came back, that was the season Spurs were relegated. And I still put that tour as one of the reasons. We came back really tired, and a lot of players got injured. The likes of Don McAllister and Co. They had cartilage injuries, and they were out for like the first 2-3 months of the season.
Sure. You mentioned Terry Neal. What was he like as a gaffer? Did he have a certain style per se?
He was very direct. I mean, he knew what he wanted, and he would just basically say, "This is how we're going to play." Now, but we were really well organised. I think the year that I joined Tottenham, that season, their away record was unbelievable. So he had them very well organised. He was the defender himself, so we were very well organised at the back. But then we had some good players, I mean, Terry Naylor, who was the right back, Nutter Naylor, and chatting to Terry a couple of weeks ago. He was launching this book, and I had a chat with him, and he was funny, but he was a great trainer. And the likes of John Pratt, people like that who were very industrious. John would do all the work in the middle of the park, and so would Steve Perryman, but that would allow the likes of Neil McNabb and Glenn Hoddle, who were more technical, to come to the fore and do what they were good at. So everybody had a part to play. And it was good to see the team start to take shape. And Big Willie Young was there at the back. Willie would win anything in the air. You put it up there, Willie would win it. And of course, when you've got Pat Jennings in goal, it's just, you can take a breathe a sigh of relief. He was just unbelievable. I watched him make saves that no other goalkeeper in the world could make. And I know for 5 or 6 years that I was there with Pat. Pat was the best goalkeeper in the world, and he won the PFA award, I think, twice. He won the players and he won the sports writers. So Pat was incredible. What a goalkeeper.
And you talk about goalkeepers, I mean, kids of any era have their heroes in the school playground. But if you did want to be a goalkeeper at that time, everyone wanted to be Pat Jennings, right? Those massive, safest hands in football, right?
Oh, listen, in training, he never thought too much of it, but the ball would be coming in, and he'd come for it, Pat. And Pat had, he had springs in his feet because he could jump really well from a standing jump. He was unbelievable. Could have been a basketball player. But then all of a sudden, it was like the hand would come out and it would just go up and up. And he would just one hand, and he'd just pluck it out of the air, one hand, pull it down. I never seen any other goalkeeper who could do that. But when you see the size of his hands, I've got big hands, but I'm not being funny. Pat's hands are about a half an inch or an inch longer than mine. And he used to just wrap the hands around the ball, and that was it. It was safe. But he was
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm glad you mentioned that, because it is a vivid memory of watching him literally the hand coming out and the ball sticking to it. Listen, towards the end, we're going to get on because you've got a book coming out which we're going to be talking about. But another book that you feature in is from Mooney and Lambert. We've got a special giveaway today because there's 39 Spurs heroes in this book, and from down the years, many of which you'll have played with and know, Gerry, I know that. So what we're going to be doing is at the end, we've got a question, and this book is up for grabs for the discerning Spurs fan, may I say. My eyes have seen the glory. Speaking of legends, who did you enjoy playing alongside the most at the Lane?
At the Lane, I love Pat because Pat was a countryman of mine. But my best mate at the time when I was in the reserves for the first year was Noel Brotherson. And Noel was a tricky wee winger. He was class, But there were we had so many good players, like Steve Perryman. Steve played in midfield. He could play anywhere in midfield. And when I ended up playing centre half for Spurs, I played a lot of games at centre half with Spurs. And Keith wanted me to play there. But I played alongside Steve Perryman. And Steve, understanding of the game and reading of the game, he used to talk me through it. And he'd say, "Big man, see when the ball's up there, you're going for it, you're attacking it. And he said, if you miss it or he flicks it on, I'll be picking it up behind you. So, we had a wee understanding, and I picked it up. And it was easier being a centre half than a centre forward because it was a more destructive position, and everything was facing you, whereas you had your back to goal as a centre forward. But I loved that, the experience of playing with Steve. Best player I played with, though, at Tottenham has to be Glenn Hoddle. Glenn could do things with the ball. Oh, my goodness. I interviewed Glenn on one of my shows, and I was talking to him about, his, how did he get such good feet? I talked about him. I said, there's only 3 players that I know who have that sort of skill. I said, George Best was one, and I remember playing with George when I was playing for Northern Ireland, and he had left foot, right foot. He could do it with both feet. It didn't make any difference. And the other one was John Barnes. Barnes had 2 feet. He was class. All fantastic players. But I said, how did you get that ability? And he says, I used to have a ball and I'd keep it up and I'd practice every minute I got. And then he says, when I was going to school, he said, I'd keep the ball up going to school until I dropped it. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. And then I'd take a piece of chalk and I would mark it on the pavement. And that was my target for the next day. I thought, that is amazing. And he said, yeah, that's how I did it. So he said, it took me like maybe 2 or 3 weeks to be able to walk to school. And I said, how far away was your school? He said, it was well over a mile. I went, listen, that would have taken me a year.
Amazing. Absolutely incredible.
He had that balance of poise. Glenn was brilliant.
I just remember as a young kid, everyone watching Glenn Hoddle, and funnily enough, you saying that, do you want right or left? That there was that goal where he juggled the ball from one to the other, then the volley went into the top corner. Amazing. Thomason's in the house. Nice to have you along. He says, Gerry, did Everton ever try and sign you?
They did, yeah. When I was playing, before I started playing for Bangor, I was playing for the schools football team, and I played only 1 year for the schools football team. And I was in as a centre half, and we won the cup that year, the Sir Robin Kinahan Cup. And there was a guy who was the chief scout who came and watched the final and approached me after the game. I was about 16 and a half at the time. And he asked me if I'd like to go to Everton on trial.
Wow.
I said, no, I'm only playing for fun here. I'm not really into soccer at the moment. I'm playing mostly Gaelic and hurling. So I turned him down. And that was back in Belfast, I would think it's probably 1970. That would be around 70, 71.
A club that did come in for you, and you did go. You became a cult hero as well. Who was Watford? They weren't short of their own heroes, by the way. Elton John and Graham Taylor. I've got to ask you first and foremost, though, did you get an invite to any of Elton John's house parties?
Yes, I did. Every year there was a house party. It was the week before the season kicked off. We used to play the game on the Saturday, and then the following Saturday would be the opening kick-off of the season. And then the next day on the Sunday, after the game on the Saturday, on the Sunday, we would go to Elton's for a party, and he would organise everything. He was amazing.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun with Luther and the boys there, and Barnesy and Pat Rice, who joined the same time as me, Les Taylor, Wilf Rostron, Ross Jenkins, and there was loads of great players who were all coming through, Ian Bolton. But these guys had been at the club for a lot longer than me, and I joined the club, and this was my first trip to Elton's. And we used to meet at the club on a Sunday morning about 9:30. We'd meet at the club, and there would be maybe 30 or 40 cars, and you have the likes of Graham would be in the front car, and he'd say, right, is everybody here? And he would check the list of who was going, and you had to have a pass to get in. And the groundsman would be there. He'd be there with his family. People who worked in the club office, they would be there. So it wasn't just the footballers; it was everybody who was involved with the club. And Elton made sure that was a done deal. And everybody went. It was a real family club. It was brilliant. So we'd all go off in a convoy, and we get to Elton's house in Windsor, and you had to go through the security, and then you drive up to the big mansion, and he wasn't even there the first time we arrived. And then the helicopter started coming over the top of the house, and Pat Rice said to me, I bet you that's him. So he was coming in from America. He just landed at Heathrow, and he got the helicopter from Heathrow to his house, and he landed on his 5-a-side pitch. Yeah, and
as he do.
There's a girl land by the pool, and I said, who's that over there? And he says, that's Kiki D. He says, I did a single with her. He said, don't go breaking my heart. He says, first single went to #1. He said, she come to see me. He said, that was 6 months ago. She's still here. It was hilarious. But Al said, go and have a view, go around the house. And he took us around the house and he took us to his record collection. And he had the biggest record collection, private record collection in the United Kingdom. I think only the BBC had a bigger record collection than him. And then he said, Luther, take Gerry to the stables. And I went, I'm not into horses. And he says, oh, it's not horses. He said, I've got a car for every day of the week in the stables. And Luther takes out the Ferrari and me and him just sit on away we go round the it was
incredible.
Class. It was class. It was brilliant, but great experience and very humbling because Graham Taylor was he was the best manager I worked under, and did a lot for everybody. There's everybody at the club will tell you a story, and Graham was just superb.
You reeled off some names there. I mean, he himself, Graham Taylor, he assembled a fantastic unit at the Hornets. What do you think were his underlying qualities for that team?
His communication and his knowledge was great. He was ahead of his time. I mean, those days, I'm talking 1980, 81, and he had lists of players and their crosses and finishing. So he was doing stats long before anybody else. And he said, look, these are the last 4 games we played, and we actually put in this many crosses, and we scored that many goals from it. And he said, these are the number of diagonal balls we played. These are the number of throw-ins, corner kicks. He had it all off, and he had people in the stand who were making a chart of it all. And then he made a sense of it. It was like a science to him. And he said, so the more crosses we put in, the more goals we score. The more shots you have at goal, he said, the more goals you score. But that's only if you hit the target. So it's like, so all of these things were all added into the equation, and he just developed it to a real art. And we bought into it. We all bought into it. And I remember the first game of the season we went up was away to Newcastle, who were one of the favourites, and we beat them 1-0. And I got booked. First minute of the game, I got booked. I was so fired up. I was a wee bit late getting in the challenge to the right back. And it was one of those. And the fans were throwing 50p pence pieces at me. It was one of those. It was great. But that was the good old days. It was great, Bob.
You say everyone's got a story about Graham Taylor. I'm gonna ask you a question, turn the tables. But did you know Graham was fond of my club Newcastle, and he used to sneak into the Gallagher Den to scout players? And when he was asked about it, he'd say, "Never ever underestimate the ability of a fan."
Right, didn't know that.
Yeah, he used to stand in the Gallagher.
Yeah, he was a big. Was it Grimsby or Lincoln or one of those he came from? Yeah, and his father was a journalist. I knew that, and so he came from a footballing background. And he had an injury when he was as a player, quite young, and that's what took him into the coaching side of football. But he was a great coach. He taught me so much about positional play and movement. And I remember saying in my book, I actually said the number of crossovers me and Luther Blissett did in a training session every day was unbelievable. But it was all timed to an art. Your movement, dragging defenders to the near post and far post. It was all an art, and it was simple. He made it simple for me because when we had the ball, we were 4-2-4. Right. But we didn't have the ball, we were 4-4-2. And the 2 wide players, which would have been John Barnes on the left and Nigel Callaghan on the right, they became defenders when we didn't have the ball, so it was a 4-4-2, and they worked. Everybody had to work hard. Nobody was allowed not to. So
that was ahead of its time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. So those are the sort of, I think they're looking at the qualities that we had then, and of course those are the qualities that you're asking of players now. And I looked at the Italian team in the Euros, and the Euros they pressed really well, and Graham made us press really well, and that was a technique.
I wanted to look back at all things Spanish. Obviously, there's that goal, and I could watch that goal over and over again. But doing my research in Spain and your time there, it's evident that they, Real Mallorca, they wanted a bit more of a presence and a bit more of a drive, something that was different for their game at the time. So I suppose when you look back at your goal, Gerry, everything that they wanted was in there.
Yeah, well, I was strong. I was big and strong and athletic, and I wasn't frightened to get into tackle. When I had a 60-40 against me, I still thought I was going to win it. It was one of those. So you have to have that mentality, and the Spanish loved that. They didn't have that mentality, but technically the Spanish were unbelievable. And our captain Rafael Gallardo was a sweeper, centre half, and he wasn't a great defender, but boy was he good on the ball. He could do everything with the ball. He would run and play 1-2s all the way down the field. And this guy was class. But, I like my centre halves and defenders to be able to defend first and foremost. And again, I was a target man, and a lot of the games I played, I was the only target man. We used to play maybe 5 in midfield, and I would rely on players breaking and supporting and putting in crosses to try and win games. So it wasn't like I'd done at Watford. Watford, it was like everybody went forward. When we got the ball,
Right.
we all moved forward. But not in Spain. And I learned a lot of lessons, and I learned a lot about Spanish football. So that when I came back, I think it helped me as a coach in terms of the different degree of fitness, because we were much fitter in the UK than they were.
Right.
And certainly we were a lot more physical. And that's what they wanted, a physical presence. And the chairman told me that, Miguel Conteste. He said to me, we want someone, who was a wee bit tasty up in the air and wouldn't pull out of tackles and would put himself about and make the ball stick, to allow players to support and get forward. And that was my job. But I finished top goal scorer that season, so I can't complain.
Again, how was the transition? Did you hit the ground running? Was there a settling in period? Another country, another climate, different style of football completely?
No, it didn't hit the ground running. It was very much an experience. And, the first 2-3 weeks, it was all excitement. But see, after 5 or 6 weeks, when you can't communicate with your teammates, because I didn't speak Spanish, and that was the biggest problem. And nobody spoke English. And I think it was a couple of the directors who spoke English. And that's when I decided I've got to learn this language. It's down to me. It's not down to them. So I started learning Spanish, and it got better over a period of time. But certainly, the first couple of months was hard work. Although we played Zaragoza in our first game and we drew 1-1. But then the next home game after that, we had an away game. Then the next home game after that was Barcelona. And Maradona played for Barcelona then, and Schuster. And they had a hell of a team. Carrasco, Alessanco was the centre half. I mean, they had, Migueli played for them as well. They had an unbelievable team. So they came and they dominated the first 10, 15 minutes. And I could not believe how good Maradona was. He was unbelievable. His first touch and his acceleration from a standstill position was incredible, and I thought, wow. And we couldn't get near him. And then we broke away after 10, 15 minutes down the left-hand side. Cross came into the far post. It's right up my street. I threw myself in, diving header, back of the net. We go 1-0 up. And I thought, right, that's it. That's something to build on. Well, was I wrong? Maradona took over and we ended up losing 4-1. He was just unplayable. He was unplayable. He was amazing.
I think it's one thing to be able to watch him on the TV, but to be on the same pitch, I mean, just mesmerizing, I would imagine. But I mean, you're there to do a job yourself, but you must think at some points in the game, wow, just incredible.
I didn't really, I'd never seen anybody do stuff like that, because George Best was a bit special as well. For me, George was the best player I ever played with. But I'll tell you what, George had 2 feet and he was quick and skillful and all the rest. But it was Maradona had power. He was low center of gravity, and when he just accelerated, he was gone. There was nobody who could get near him. He was just unbelievable. So I was disappointed he was playing in the opposition, because I wish he had been in my team. But it was an experience, and I actually got to meet him a few times, because the Argentinian lads in the team afterwards, they all got together and they introduced me to him. And then the next time when we went over to Barcelona, the night before the game, they arranged to meet him in a wee bar downstairs for a caña, which is a small short beer, and to say hello. And they brought me with them, and I was actually half decent at Spanish then, and got chatting to him, and he was so funny. He was great.
Brilliant.
He was top man, but he was a special person.
Amazing. Speaking of speaking the lingo, what a master stroke for your Spanish journey to continue with a absolutely amazing career covering La Liga. Having watched personally your passion for the Spanish game, it was evident, and I think it was a reason a lot of people switched on, because they could relate to you. But by the same token, you had the knowledge and everything, so it was a perfect fit, wasn't it?
It was a perfect fit, and I only got that gig because of George Best.
Yep.
He was the one that put me forward for it, and he was working at Sky, and he had asked me to meet him at Battersea Park for a 5-a-side football match. It was only for 10 or 15 minutes for one Sunday morning, and it was to do the benefits of small-sided games, because you got more touches, and they were trying to promote it. And it was in Spain, they played football sala, which was with a smaller ball, a size 3. And again, that helps your touch and everything else. So George had said, will you come and do this for Chrysalis? And Chrysalis, I didn't know, were hired by Sky to do Spanish football for the first year, and that was a week afterwards. So when I went to do the five-a-side and have the chat, I got talking to the Christmas producers and directors, and they said, George told us that you played in Spain and you speak a bit of Spanish. And I said, yeah. I said, I played for 2 seasons there. And he said, what are you doing next week? Would you be interested in coming in as an analyst and guest? And I said, yeah, no problem. And that's how it started.
It's amazing, isn't it? Football creates so many opportunities, both on and off the pitch. Absolutely fantastic. We've got to ask about Spurs getting a lot of questions, but bringing it right back up to date. I mean, I'm going to ask you what your hopes are for the season, but there is a. Is there a blip? The Derby result obviously wasn't great against Arsenal, and their questions being answered, but it's the way that everyone jumps on a scenario. So it's a two-part question, really, Gerry. It's current, having a look at Spurs currently after the last couple of weeks that they've had, and the hopes for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, well, I was optimistic when they won the first 3 games in a row, and it looked as if it was going to be great, but it never works out that way. I think it's going to be a really tight Premier League this year. There's so many good teams in there. I'm looking at the way Liverpool have bounced back, and Manchester United's signings could make a big difference. I watched them last night. I commentated on the game last night at Virgin Media, and I couldn't believe they were still in the game at half time. And then they go 1-0 down, and that was the kick up the backside they probably needed, and then they just went on. But look at what happened in the end. Manchester United come back and win the game 2-1. So there's going to be a lot of surprises. Manchester City, Manchester United, Chelsea, Liverpool. You look at the Leicesters, you look at West Ham. West Ham's having a good season. And Tottenham, I thought were going to be up there with like the West Hams. It's still not over yet, as I say, the season. They can turn it around, but they need to start playing with a lot more consistency. I didn't think we played that well in the first half an hour. The game was over after half an hour against Arsenal.
It was.
We lost it there.
It's funny you say that there's a lot of teams involved, and there's no one really settled into a pattern, so to speak, has there? It's, everyone was, it's easy to say, look at Chelsea. Chelsea are going to take some stopping. Everyone fancied Chelsea to beat City at the weekend just gone. Yeah, Chelsea are too strong. And then City turn up and deliver a masterclass. Leicester, not to be discounted. West Ham playing out of their skin. So no one's really settled down yet, have they?
No, it's a tough league. I mean, it is a very competitive league, and some of the sides, like Aston Villa, look at their results. Winning away, they've been, and even after losing Jack Grealish, I do feel that there's some really good players out there. But it's going to be a tight league, and there's no gimmies anymore. Brighton, my old club, Brighton, what a start they've had to the season, unbelievable. Brilliant. They've been playing some really good football, and the manager, Graham Potter, he likes to play football, and he's another one who works off the statistics, and it's proven good for him at the moment. So when teams like Brighton can get themselves in the top 3 or 4, it's good. Can only be good for the football, I think.
Looking at the style, you were talking before how you played with your back to goal, traditional, and I always think of Shearer when I see that style. You'd be waiting a bit longer for the ball to come to you now with this playing out from the back business, wouldn't you? Heart in mouth.
It's like, it depends on the players you've got. I think you play football according to what players you've got.
Okay.
And, Manchester City, Pep Guardiola set out. He did this at Barcelona, and he played out from the back, and it was using the goalkeeper as an extra player who was going to play and make players make mistakes. And I have to say, I watched Villarreal last night playing from the back. Pau Torres at 6'4". What a left foot, what a right foot, can dribble with the ball, went forward, went past people. They've got really good technique. But even with all the technique they've got, they still ended up on the losing side. I looked at the game, which was Real Madrid at the Bernabeu against Sheriff. And if you look at the statistics, I think it's 78% possession Real Madrid, 31 shots at goal, 19 on target. Sheriff had 4 shots at goal, 3 on target, and 1-2-1. Those are the things you can't allow for in football. So there's no pattern. It's to do with players and mental attitude. And if the attitude's good and you've got the players all singing off the same hymn sheet, you can do really well. We were tipped at Watford that year that we went up in 81-82. And we were tipped to go straight back down again. And we finished runners-up to Liverpool for the league that year. And Liverpool won it. And we beat Liverpool last game of the season. So we were that close to winning Watford winning the Premier League. So it can be done. It's like that. That's a bit like what happened with Leicester and Leicester when they won the league. So there's fairy tales out there, and you can do stuff. So I'm happy the way football's going forward. I'm just not happy about the amount of money is getting into the game and out of the game, and through wages and big transfer fees. And look at Barcelona. Barcelona, 1.5 billion in debt.
You know, it hasn't been publicly acknowledged, but probably one of the major reasons that they had to let their diamond go. I mean, literally because of salary and the way the club is. It is a very sad state of affairs. The messages coming through are fantastic, saying that it's been amazing listening to your tales, but people can get more of them, Gerry, because it's going to be out in black and white, so to speak, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got a book. It's going to be ready in 2 weeks' time. It's going to be published in 2 weeks' time. I've been working on it for a year with a guy called David Bowler. And David Bowler did Danny Blanchflower's testimony, or did his biography. And David's from the Midlands, and he's a good writer. And I've been working with him for a year. It's been a lot of fun. But it's hard work as well. And there's a lot of funny stories in it. But there's a lot of stuff that's, it doesn't just tell about my football career. It talks about me growing up and how I evolved as, you know, coming up from the troubles in Belfast, and then obviously becoming a professional footballer with Tottenham Hotspur, and then my journey to Spain, and obviously
Are you there, Gerry? We've just lost him momentarily. Okay, so guys, we're coming up towards the end of the show as it is. Now, what we do want to do is to give you the opportunity to win this book from Mooney and Lambert, which is a collector's item, by the way. Let me tell you that. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you a question about Gerry's career, and basically you can email us in, and we'll pick a winner through the week. So the book is My Eyes Have Seen the Glory. Absolutely fantastic book, and one for you to try and win. So with that in mind, the question is this: who did Gerry actually make his Spurs debut against? Who did he play against in his first game for Tottenham Hotspur? So yeah, Tottenham Hotspur, who did Gerry Armstrong make his debut against? Don't put it on here. We want you to email your answer to peter@parklanelive.com for a chance to win that special book. It will be sent to you. Okay, so email your answer to peter@parklanelive.com. Great. Okay. Absolutely fantastic catching up with a real legend, another legend to join our show. Absolutely fantastic. We hope you've enjoyed it. Here, before everyone goes into meltdown, is the last code of the evening. There you go. So you've got your code, you've got the competition. So please enter the competition for a chance to win that amazing book, of which Gerry stars in. Just wrapping up, Gerry, we just wanted to say a massive thank you to you.
My pleasure.
It's been fantastic. We've just given the question out for people to win the fantastic book from Mooney and Lambert, which you appear in also. My Eyes Have Seen the Glory. We've asked them, so don't tell them. We've asked them, who did Gerry Armstrong score his first, make his debut against for Tottenham in the lily white shirt? They're going to email the answer in for a chance to win that book. Enjoy the game tonight, Gerry. We know that you're working straight after this interview, so we can't thank you enough for your time. And all we ask is that you come back onto Hollywood Balls later on in the season, and we'll catch up about Spurs.
It'd be my pleasure. It's great speaking with you, Pete. And listen, I'm looking forward to it.
Take care.
Thank you. All the best. Cheers.